Starting a budget can feel, well, super intimidating, right? Like you're just staring at this blank spreadsheet full of numbers. But what if we flip that idea on its head? What if we thought of it not as a math problem, but as the first step on a journey to finally feeling in control of your money? Well, today we're going to follow the story of someone who just took that very first.
So this is Jill. She's 24, and I love this quote from her. You can just feel the excitement, can't you? For her, this isn't about restriction or cutting back. It's about a totally fresh start and this new sense of possibility for her financial future. So let's dive in and see how her very first monthly budget actually went down. And you've got to understand, for Jill and her husband, this is way bigger than just tracking expenses for a single month. No, this is a fundamental shift. They're trying to move away from that constant stress of living paycheck to paycheck and start building a real foundation for the future they want.
Okay, so let's get to know Jill a little better. She's 24, living down in South Florida, and she works full-time in hospitality. And her goals, they're probably going to sound pretty familiar to a lot of you. The immediate mission is just to get their finances organized. But the big dream, the real why behind all this, saving up for a house and finally building a solid emergency fund. The whole shebang. So to make all this happen, they came up with a game plan, a real strategy. They're combining their incomes and trying out a monthly budget for the very first time, even though they get paid every couple of weeks. The real magic, though, is in how they decided to handle their paychecks. And here's their system. It's so simple, but honestly, it's brilliant. First, all the money goes into one pot. Then, that first paycheck of the month, that's the workhorse. It pays all the big core bills. Then, the second paycheck of the month, well, that's the fun one. That gets to go directly towards all their savings goals. The whole idea is just to give every single dollar a job, Okay, but here's the twist. This is where the story gets really interesting. Of all the months to start this new plan, they picked January. And well, January turned out to be, let's just say, a complicated month. It was super expensive, and it put their brand new budget to the ultimate test right out of the gate. All right, so let's look at the numbers. What were they working with? Their first combined paycheck for January came in at $4,738.11. That's the money they had to cover all those core bills we were just talking about. And boom, almost all of that income was just swallowed by housing costs. See, they were moving, which meant they got hit with a triple whammy. You've got the fee for breaking their old lease, then partial rent for the old place, and partial rent for the new place. All told, their housing costs for this 1 month exploded to over $3,800. Wow. And this chart, man, it really shows you what's going on. Their normal rent is already a big chunk of change. But this month, those one-off moving costs jacked it up by more than $600. That is a massive, massive hit to take, especially on your very first attempt at a monthly budget. But here's the thing. Even with that insane housing bill, they still managed to pay all their other big bills from that first paycheck. We're talking the car lease, insurance, the phone, electricity. And look, they've got a small win coming up. That phone bill is about to get way cheaper. So even though it was tough, they actually pulled off the first part of their plan. So what was the result? The tough reality of that super expensive month? Well, after paying all those bills, there was literally nothing left from that first paycheck for savings. Not a dime, zilch. Now, for a budget that's all about saving, that sounds like a total failure, right? But hold on. This is where real life smacks you in the face. Budgeting is messy. It is never, ever perfect. And Jill is the first one to say, hey, we don't have this all figured out. This first go-around really shined a light on some of the, let's call them works in progress.
And these are the things they're still wrestling with, and I bet these sound familiar to a lot of us. Like, how do you track every single dollar on a credit card you both use? And what about cash for groceries? How do you get that into your digital budget? And then there's the stuff you can't even plan for, like a surprise internet setup fee. Yeah, they're learning fast that budgeting isn't a set-it-and-forget-it kind of deal. It's all about adjusting on the fly.
And I think Jill just says it perfectly here. It's not going to be perfect. We will have to adjust as we go, but this is a lot of progress. She gets it. She knows it's messy, but she's not focused on the imperfections. She's focused on the fact that this is a huge leap forward from where they started. Okay, so let's reframe this whole thing. Yeah, they didn't save any money from that first paycheck. But was the month a failure? Absolutely not. It was a huge success. You want to know why? Because the goal wasn't perfection. The goal was just starting. And you know what? That second half of the month, it proved their system actually works. Once those crazy moving costs were gone, that second paycheck rolled in, and guess what? They were able to push it straight into savings, exactly like the plan said. So that imperfect start, it actually led to a real, tangible win.
And this right here, this says it all. The real win wasn't about the numbers on a spreadsheet. It was about a total shift in their mindset. I mean, look at this. They went from living paycheck to paycheck, just reacting to bills with a ton of stress, to having a forward-looking plan, knowing exactly where their money is going, and feeling proud and in control. That's the victory.
So if there's one thing to take away from their story, it's this. The real win wasn't about having a perfect budget from day one. That's not the point. The real win was just starting.
Look, at the end of the day, a budget isn't some rigid prison. It's more like a map for your journey. And yeah, there are going to be detours and roadblocks, just like Jill ran into, but the whole point is to have the map in the first place, right? So I'll leave you with this question to chew on. What's your first step going to be?